The old woman's knees were giving out right there on the sidewalk, and nobody stopped. Lena saw it happen from across the street. The woman had been trying to lift a heavy canvas bag into the back of a rusted station wagon, the kind with wood paneling peeling off the sides, and one knee just buckled, not dramatically, not in a way that made anyone gasp, just quietly, the way old things break. She caught herself on the car door and stood there breathing hard, waiting for someone to come. A man in a suit walked past. A teenager on a phone walked past. A woman pushing a stroller looked over, then looked away. Lena crossed the street. She had a shift starting in 40 minutes at the cleaning company on Dundas, and she hadn't eaten since the morning before because the fridge had stopped working again, and everything inside had gone warm. She was wearing her work clothes, dark pants, a plain white top she'd pressed herself, and she'd spent the last of her change on the bus fare to get here. She did not have time to stop. She stopped anyway. "Ma'am, let me help you with that." The old woman looked up. She had deep-set eyes, dark and watchful, the kind of eyes that had spent a long time deciding whether to trust people. She looked at Lena for a moment before she answered. "Thank you, child," she said. "My hands aren't what they used to be." Lena lifted the bag into the back of the car. It was heavier than she expected, full of what felt like root vegetables and jars. She set it down carefully, then noticed there were 2 more bags on the sidewalk. "All of these?" "All of these," the woman said. Lena loaded the rest. She noticed the woman's left hand was wrapped in a bandage, the kind you do yourself at home with gauze and tape. She didn't say anything about it. "Where are you going?" Lena asked. "Do you need someone to drive you somewhere, or call someone for you?" "I'm going home," the woman said. "My son was supposed to come help me today. He didn't come." She said it without bitterness, the way you say something you've made a kind of peace with. "I'll manage." Lena looked at the car. "Do you drive?" "I drove for 50 years, the woman said, and there was a flicker of something proud in her voice. "I can manage a few blocks." "Okay," Lena said. "Is there anything else? Do you need?" "I'm fine," the woman said firmly. But then she added, softer, "You're a kind girl. What's your name?" "Lena." "Lena." The woman seemed to hold the name carefully, the way you hold something breakable. "My name is Mama Edith." Lena nodded. She looked at her watch. 34 minutes. She said goodbye and walked to the bus stop and didn't think much more about it, because that was the kind of thing Lena did and then moved on from. She helped people. She didn't keep a record. She'd come to Toronto from Accra 4 years ago, 23 years old, and carrying more hope than luggage. She'd gotten a student visa and a spot in a college program for healthcare administration, and she'd told herself she'd be finished in 2 years, working in an office somewhere, building a life. That was the plan. Plans have a way of meeting reality. Her mother got sick in year 1. The money she sent home ate into everything: tuition, groceries, rent. She switched from full-time to part-time studies, then part-time to deferred. She'd been deferred for 2 years now, still paying off the courses she hadn't finished, still sending money home, still telling herself she'd get back to it soon. She lived in a bachelor apartment in Parkdale with a window that faced a brick wall and a landlord who fixed nothing. The cleaning company paid $12.50 an hour, and the supervisor, a thin-lipped woman named Ms. Hargrove, liked to remind her that people were waiting for her job. She was not unhappy, exactly. She had friends she met at church on Sunday mornings. She had a phone full of voice notes from her mother and her younger sister, Bia. She read novels on her break. She made a very good jollof on the days she had the energy. She was tired most of the time, but she knew tiredness. She'd learned to carry it without letting it show. The trouble started 5 weeks after she met Mama Edith on the street. The building Lena cleaned was a commercial tower on Bay Street. 12 floors of law firms and financial consultancies, and a private members club on the top floor that smelled of cedar and leather. Her team worked from 10 at night to 4 in the morning. They were mostly women, mostly immigrant, mostly quiet. They did their work and went home before the building's daytime occupants arrived, as though they were part of the maintenance of an illusion. The illusion that offices stayed clean on their own. Lena was assigned to floors 8 through 10. She was careful, thorough, and fast. Miss Hargrove had moved her to 8 through 10 after 3 months because she trusted Lena not to disturb anything on the legal floors. Lena had taken that as a compliment. On a Tuesday in November, Miss Hargrove called her into the supply room at 11:30. "There's been a report," she said. She had a tablet in her hand and she held it angled, so Lena couldn't quite read the screen. From the 9th floor. Apparently some items went missing from a partner's office after last Thursday's shift. Lena felt something cold go through her. What items? A watch and a phone. Left on the desk. "I didn't take anything," Lena said. She heard herself say it and hated how it sounded. Reflexive, defensive, the way a guilty person says it. But also the way an innocent person says it, because there's no better way to say it. "I'm not accusing you," Miss Hargrove said, "but you were the last one on 9 on Thursday. I clean 9 every Thursday. That's my assignment." "I know that." Miss Hargrove set the tablet down. "The building is filing a formal report. Until it's resolved, I need to move you to floors 2 and 3. 2 and 3 were the lobby-level offices, storage rooms, and a printing company. The worst assignment in the building. Everyone knew it. This is because they haven't found anything yet," Lena said carefully. "Not because they've found evidence." "It's procedure," Miss Hargrove said. Lena went home at 4 in the morning and sat on her mattress in the dark and did not cry. She thought about what she had on her bank statement, $422, and her half-finished program still hanging over her, and the rent due in 11 days, and her mother's medication in Accra, and she sat with all of that very quietly and did not cry. The person who had filed the report was a man named Mr. Denton. She didn't know this at the time. She found out later, the way you find out things like this, in pieces when it's almost too late. Mr. Denton was a senior partner at the firm on 9. He had a reputation for being difficult with building staff. This too she learned later, from one of her colleagues, a woman named Rita, who'd been cleaning that building for 6 years and knew everything about everyone. He'd complained before. A coffee mug moved from one side of his desk to the other. The blinds opened at the wrong angle. He treated the overnight crew like a problem to be managed, not people doing their jobs. The watch, it turned out, was found 3 days later. His assistant had put it in a drawer on Wednesday, the day before Lena's shift. The phone had never actually been missing, had left it at home and forgotten. But the report had already been filed. The formal complaint sat in a folder somewhere, and no one in an official capacity came to Lena's supply closet to say, "We were wrong. It was a misunderstanding. Your name is clear." Miss Hargrove called her in again 2 weeks later. Lena thought it was to give her floors back. "We're going to have to let you go," Miss Hargrove said. Lena looked at her. The watch was found, yes, and the phone wasn't even missing, yes. But there's been another concern raised. Miss Hargrove did not look at her directly. "About your attitude in responding to the first inquiry. My attitude, you were combative." Lena had said, "I didn't take anything." That was all she had said. She had not raised her voice. She had not used a single word she'd regret. But Miss Hargrove was holding a piece of paper, and on the other side of that paper was someone's written account of an attitude problem. And Lena understood then that the decision had already been made before she walked through the door. She took the paper they needed her to sign. She did not argue. She went home on the bus at 11:30 in the morning, in the daylight, which felt strange after years of coming home in the dark, and she looked out the window and watched the city go past. She spent 3 weeks looking for work. She answered 41 job postings. She got 3 interviews and no callbacks. She was careful in her applications, thorough, and she knew she was qualified, and she knew also that qualification doesn't always have much to do with it. She applied to a grocery store and didn't hear back. She applied to a hotel and was told the position had been filled. She applied to a different cleaning company and was told, after the interview, that a reference check was required. And she knew that the reference would go back to Miss Hargrove, and she knew what Miss Hargrove would say. On a Wednesday afternoon, she went to a food bank on Roncesvalles, because the fridge was empty, and the $400 was down to $70, and there were still 8 days until she'd expect any money at all. She stood in the line outside, collar up against the November wind, and she looked at the other people in the line. A man in a good coat who wouldn't meet anyone's eyes. A young mother with a child asleep in a stroller. 2 older men who talked quietly in Portuguese. and she felt what she always felt in those moments, a complicated mixture of gratitude and grief that she didn't have language for. She was thinking about Bia, who was going to need school fees in January, when a voice beside her said, "Lena." She turned. Mama Edith was standing 2 people back in the line, wearing a yellow head wrap and a long winter coat the color of dried leaves. She was smaller than Lena remembered. Or maybe Lena was just more tired than she'd been the day they met. "Mama Edith," Lisa said. She felt suddenly embarrassed, though she knew she had no reason to be, knew that embarrassment in a food bank line was something other people's voices had put there, not her own, and she made herself stand straight. "You remember me," Mama Edith said, and smiled. "Of course." They ended up standing together in the line, and then walking together once they had their parcels, and then sitting in a diner on the corner because Mama Edith said she needed to rest her knees before she walked to the bus stop, and Lena had nowhere she needed to be. Mama Edith ordered tea. Lena ordered nothing. "Tell me," Mama Edith said, and Lena, who did not usually tell people things, told her. Maybe because she was tired. Maybe because Mama Edith had the kind of face that made you believe the words would be safe in her hands. She told her about the job, the accusation, Ms. Hargrove, the reference problem, the $70. She didn't perform any of it. She just said what had happened. Mama Edith listened without interrupting, which was rarer than people thought. When Lena finished, the old woman was quiet for a moment. She stirred her tea. Then she said, "What kind of work were you doing before the cleaning job?" "Before all of this, I was studying healthcare administration," Lena said. "I had to pause. I'm trying to go back." "What does that mean, healthcare administration?" "Operations, scheduling, records, the part of hospitals and clinics that keeps everything running, billing, staffing, coordinating between departments. I had 2 semesters left when I had to stop." Mama Edith looked at her steadily. "And you were good at it?" "Yes," Lena said. There was no vanity in it, just honesty. "I was good at it." Mama Edith nodded slowly, as though confirming something she'd already decided. She picked up her bag. "I'm going to make a phone call," she said. "I want you to write down your number for me." Lena wrote her number on a napkin. She didn't ask who Mama Edith was going to call, because she didn't want to hope for anything specific. She'd learned to be careful with hope. It had a way of making the fall worse. 12 days later, Lena got a call from a number she didn't recognize. "Is this Lena Asante?" A man's voice, clear and measured. "Yes. My name is Mr. Osi. I run a private medical group. 4 clinics across the city. My mother asked me to call you." Lena sat down on the edge of her bed. "She told me what happened to you," he said. "She also told me she met you once on Bloor Street when you helped her load her car. She said she'd never forgotten it." A pause. "She said you didn't stay to be thanked. I had a bus to catch," Lena said. Mr. Osi laughed. Not a polished laugh, a real one. "She said that too." He explained what he was looking for. An operations coordinator for his busiest clinic, the one on Eglinton, to start immediately pending a background check. The pay was $18 an hour with benefits and a pathway to a management role. He was looking for someone organized, responsible, and able to work with discretion. His mother had told him she'd found that person. "I'd like to schedule an interview," he said. "If you're open to it." "I'm open to it," Lena said. She sat in her apartment for a long time after the call ended. The fridge was still empty. The window still faced a brick wall. She thought about Mr. Denton and Ms. Hargrove, and the 41 job applications and the food bank line and $70. She thought about all the ways the world had told her, in small persistent ways, that she was barely worth noticing. And then she thought about a woman with a wrapped hand and watchful eyes standing next to a rusted station wagon on a Tuesday afternoon, waiting to see if anyone would stop. She thought about the fact that she hadn't stopped because she expected anything. She'd stopped because the woman's knee had buckled and no one else was going to. That was the thing about kindness, Lena thought. It had nothing to do with reward. But sometimes reward came anyway, quietly, years later, or weeks later, through a phone call you weren't expecting on an afternoon when you'd almost given up. The interview was on a Friday morning. Lena borrowed a blazer from her friend at church, ironed her good trousers, and took the subway north. The clinic on Eglinton was clean and well run, with a waiting room that smelled of fresh paint and a reception staff who nodded at each other across the room without being asked. Lena noticed these things the way she noticed everything, carefully. Mr. Osi was in his mid-40s, tall, with his mother's watchful eyes. He had the calm efficiency of someone who made decisions quickly and without drama. He asked her about her studies, her previous work, how she handled competing priorities, what she did when she didn't have all the information she needed. She answered everything directly. She didn't oversell. She didn't apologize for the gap in her employment. At the end of the interview, he said, "Do you have questions for me?" She asked about the coordination process between the 4 clinics. She asked about patient volume and staffing ratios. She asked one more question that she'd been thinking about since the morning. What happened to the person who was in this role before? He looked at her, surprised. She was promoted to manage the Scarborough location. Lena nodded. That's good to know. He smiled, and she could tell she'd said the right thing, not because it was strategic, but because it was genuine. She wanted to know if people moved forward here, or just stood in place. They called her back that afternoon. The job was hers. On a Sunday in December, Lena took the bus to a neighborhood east of Coxwell, to a street of semi-detached houses, with bare winter gardens and Christmas lights, just starting to go up in the windows. She carried a small bag of mandazi she'd made that morning, wrapped in foil to keep them warm. She stood at the door of a house with a yellow door and knocked. Mama Edith answered. She looked at the bag, then at Lena, then at the bag again. "You didn't have to bring anything," she said. "I know," Lena said. Mama Edith let her in. The house was warm and full of the smell of something cooking. Stew, groundnuts, maybe both. There were photographs on the wall going all the way up the staircase, and a cat asleep on the radiator, and a sound from the kitchen of someone moving around in there. "David is here," Mama Edith said, meaning Mr. Osi. "He comes on Sundays." "I won't stay long," Lena said. "I just wanted." She stopped. She wasn't sure what she'd wanted to say. "Thank you felt too small. I don't know how to hold what you did for me felt too large." Mama Edith touched her arm lightly. "You don't need to explain, Lena. Come in, sit down. There's enough food." She said it the way certain women say things, with a quiet, absolute authority that makes refusing seem beside the point. Like there was never any other option. Like she had always known Lena would be here, in this warm house on a Sunday afternoon, sitting down at a table with enough food for everyone. Lena came in, she sat down, and for the first time in a very long time, she let herself just be still.